Welcome to the monthly online class. Today I want to talk to you about um, the difference between unfoldment and development, and also a little bit about ethics and how that relates to integrity. Because you know that if you know me at all, if you've had any kind of classes from me, you know that integrity is a major issue um, that I stress in my classes and in my work. But to start off with, I want to talk about unfoldment. You hear uh, people talk about unfoldment classes and development classes, and you may begin to wonder, well, is one better than the other? Or is that the same thing? And I'd have to say that most people use those two terms to mean the same thing. But after I've done some investigation and checked in with my guides, I've come to realize that unfoldment is not quite the same thing as development. So I wanted to kind of put that on the table for you to think about and try to decide um, if this is the right thing for you. I believe it is because you're working at your own pace and that type of thing, but I want you to be aware that there is a difference between those two words. Um, Unfoldment has to do with um, allowing a natural gift or talent to expand and grow. And it almost always is done um, within a circle setting. And this is where several people decide that they want to sit for mediumship, unfoldment, and they gather once a week or however often is convenient for them, but on a regular basis. And they allow this mediumship ability to open up. Sometimes people that are already exhibiting or demonstrating mediumship abilities will be the ones that sit in this type of a setting. But it also involves allowing people that have not shown any aptitude towards mediumship. So anyone can sit in an unfoldment circle and they um, expand or allow their gifts to grow at their own pace, in their own way, and it isn't ever really specifically shaped in one direction. It's allowed to become what it is, and the example I would give is that in the spiritual unfoldment class that I sat in originally at a spiritualist church, we were allowed to let our gifts expand however they did. Mine went towards mediumship. Charles, who was sitting in the same class as me, his developed or expanded, I'll say, into healing. Another lady that was there, hers expanded towards artistic abilities, drawings. And somebody else that was sitting there, their gifts expanded more towards oratory or inspirational abilities. So the leader of that circle, who was the minister at the time, he did not insist that it just be mediumship or it just be this or it just be that. he allowed and watched the flowers all expand. Because when in the springtime, when the flowers come up in the garden, you don't always know. The first time I moved into this house, I didn't know what was planted here. And this house was built in 1890, so there could have been all kinds of things that I had no idea about. So the wonder was, after the snow melted and the sun started shining nice and warmly, and the green stuff started growing, the buds would start opening up, and I would recognize, oh, those are daisies, or those are tulips, and there's some irises over here. So that was the exciting part, that you would watch to see where the the flowers would come up and what they would be when they came up. So in an unfoldment circle, that was also an exciting area to see how each person was going to open up, what their bud was going to develop into, what type of flower or what type of spiritual gift they were going to start using. Sometimes it took longer to figure that out. Sometimes the people that were sitting in the circle just slept. They didn't really start opening up in any particular direction. And that was attributed to the fact that it just wasn't their time yet. Nothing was ever forced. It just did so in a natural way. And this is the way I tend to think of our online class, our monthly class, is that this is an unfoldment circle. And I know each one of you have different gifts and different purposes for using the gifts, and different ways of wanting to exhibit the gifts and how you're going to use them in your life. So that's what I like about this. And there's no pressure on you. I don't try to dictate how you're going to do that. Although I do have certain perimeters that I use, to guide you. And if you have questions, I'm very happy to give you my understanding of it. But with this type of work, I don't feel like it's a good thing to have too many restraints or too many rules, because the box gets smaller and smaller and smaller as that teacher starts to put their own spin on it. So then we go from unfoldment to the word development. Development is that I just spoke about quickly. It's more in a box. Development usually happens within a set group of classes, like a series of classes. So you may join in a metaphysical bookstore and go and join this development class that lasts for 6 or 8 weeks. And you would get the teachings of the particular instructor or teacher that is hosting this class. So you would get a better understanding of a lot of different types of uses and different ways of developing your gifts, such as numerology, astrology, what I want to say, reading tarot cards or oracle cards, ways of reading mirrors, using scrying as a technique, rune stones, developing symbols and using those it's more or less using um, tools. And a development class would be sharing information about different tools that you might use in your development. So it's giving you this step up with ways to open your gifts developmentally. There's a structure that's involved. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a wonderful thing to do because there are so many tools and lessons and basic information that is valuable in your work. Um, how you use that and how you present it to the people that you're working with, your clients. So everything you can learn is of value in the work that you're doing. But those are the fine-tuned differences. One is allowing your gift to open at its own pace, in its own way, in its own direction. And development is uh, giving you stair steps to follow to open your gifts in a precise and planned way. So you see why I'm saying that what we're doing is more unfoldment. Because I consider what we do. I'm sitting in the circle here, and I'm um, bringing you into my circle and allowing you to open up in your own pace. Uh, I give you the lesson plan once a month, and you go at your own pace. You watch it, you read the literature that goes with it. You may do the meditation that comes with the packet, or you may not. You may decide, well, I've got this and I'll look at it later, but this book is more interesting to me. And at that time, that's what you should be doing. If the book is more interesting to you, then go for the book. Because, like I said, all information is valuable as to who you are as a person. So that kind of brings me to the idea of ethics. And I want to touch on that today with you. And there's a little bit I want to read to you out of my book, the holy grail of books, Psychic Integrity. Um, but ethics uh, is something that I feel it's important for you to put together some thoughts in your head and write down some things that you could share with clients or people that are interested in what you're doing. Sometimes it's not important that clients know about this because if you are the person that they chose to work with, that's because they feel comfortable with you. But sometimes people outside of your realm need to know what you do, and you'll have a list of ideas of how you believe your profession should be and how you relate to others within your professional standing. So ethics is something that um, I'll just read what I've got here in my first chapter. The concept of ethics is generally described as professional standards of conduct, uprightness, and honor, being fair. Ethics are derived from social commonalities. Now remember that, social commonalities. Sometimes they come as a result of what is deemed usual or as society's expected customary response. Now, that doesn't mean that has integrity, okay? It's an ethical standard or the norm of what's expected within your community, um, within, uh, okay, so if we think of the community of mediumship or psychics and people that work with clients in this way, that means we're including all the mediums and psychics who have integrity, right? But we're also including all of the mediums and psychics that don't have so much integrity. Maybe don't have any training in what they're doing. They maybe were born with the gift and have not had any structure as to how to present information to a client or to ask permission before they move into someone's energy field. And then there's the psychics and the mediums that are totally disrespectful, that have no integrity at all, that are scamming customers into believing that they have a spiritual gift. So this is the community of mediumship and psychics that creates society's expected customary response. Is that the kind of ethics that you want? Of course not. So when we create our ethical statements, they have to include the integrity of who we are. And integrity comes first before ethics comes. Integrity is the substance of how we've grown up in our lives, what our parents taught us, how school influenced us, how we related to our friends and neighbors, how we played in sidewalk games, and how different situations in our lives affected us and how we responded to them. So integrity has a very deep connection with who we are as a human being and how we deal with our life. It has to do with problems that we've stuffed away in our subconscious. It has to do how we may look at those problems later on and deal with them. It has to do with our whole fabric of life, and how we relate to everything, including how we relate to ourselves. And that's a very important issue, is how we speak to ourselves. It's how we act in our lives. So we take the integrity of who we are as a person and we create ethical statements that we can share with people that are interested in what we have to do. So some of the statements that originally have come about out of society would be this. I promise to always serve the best interests of my clients and conduct my professional activities without intentionally causing harm. Perfect. This is a perfect statement. Without intentionally causing harm. What I intend to do with my client is heartfelt. It is coming from a loving space of who I am and what I give you through spirit. And I have a wonderful feeling with that particular statement. I treat all my clients with respect, regardless of origin, race, religion, gender, age, or sexual preference. This gives the person out in society the understanding of, oh, you recognize that there are issues there. And in our particular time of history, this is a major deal. I'm glad to know that these things do not interfere with how you relate to your client. I honestly present my qualifications, including educational credentials, credentials and levels of certification. It's important for your client to know these things. I have seen some people on their website, they have listed, I don't know if I could do this, they've listed every single class or workshop or lecture that they've attended and who the presenter was. Every single one. And they include teachers that they didn't necessarily sit in classes with, but who they studied. And I think this is interesting in the fact that it gives a good shape or feel about what's important to the reader and what's important to how they give it to their client, give the information or their expertise to the client, and the area that they're interested in working in. I certainly would not have any classes from astrology because I'm not interested in that particular area. So if somebody was looking for an astrologer and they saw my website and they didn't see anything in astrology, then they go, okay, well, she's an interesting person, but it's not somebody that I'm interested in going to see. So that helps the client understand if they want to see you or not. I keep confidential the names of clients and information shared or discussed surrounding the reading. It's not important only to keep your client's name out of society, but also the information that you've given them or that they've shared with you. This is like a doctor or a lawyer. This is very hallowed ground here, to not discuss people's personal business. Now, I have used examples, and sometimes I will be reading for somebody and I go, this is really great information. Everybody should know this, or I could really use this in my class. Would you allow me to use the information that came through Spirit? And I guarantee to them, I'm not going to tell them who you are, or I won't give them names or even the circumstances about how this came about, to make sure it's okay. There's some really great information. They go, this is private and I don't really want to share it. And I go, that's perfect. I will not share it with anybody. So you have to really use some discretion when that comes. I recommend a consultation with a licensed professional for legal advice, financial or medical advice, or psychological nature that I am not qualified to provide. So make sure you have some people listed in a place that you know where you keep that list. Lawyers that you feel are very high in integrity, medical professionals. I like to keep holistic doctors and people that do alternative types of work, and even financial money planners and that type of thing, because I don't like to go there in my readings. I really don't like to go there. Occasionally, if a health issue pops up in the general stream of the reading, I'll share that information. But I always say, I am not a medical professional. I am not even a medical intuitive. I've not had any training in that. I don't even want to have training in that. But this information came through, and I want you to take it and use it however is right for you, whatever it means to you. So I always just kind of move away from all of that. And I respect my client's right to end their reading at any time. Isn't that interesting? Not only can you close the reading when you want to, but so can the client. And if the client is sitting with you for 5-10 minutes and they're just totally shaking their head, no, just doesn't seem to be fitting, they can say, I don't think we're jiving today. Or no, you're not giving me any kind of information that sounds right at all. I'm done now. And you don't charge them for that session. Now, if they wait till the end, yeah, they're gonna pay you. But if they see in the first few minutes or first few questions or a bit of information that it just doesn't feel right, they have the right to stop and say, no, maybe we'll try this again another time, or maybe I should be going to a different type of a reader. And you also have that right. If after the first 5-10 minutes it isn't driving for you and you feel like you're picking up on 2nd Street and your client's sitting right here on 1st Street, and it's just not, it just doesn't seem to be fitting, then you can say, you know, this just doesn't seem to work today. For some reason, I'm not cueing in to the right frequency, and this just isn't happening. Something is off. Maybe I'm not up to par today. Maybe our connections just aren't meant to meet. And that has to be within the first 10 minutes, though, and that because if you've been reading for that person, well, let's say if you've been giving information to that person for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and you still feel like this isn't working, wow, you've wasted all that energy, all that time, all that precious time for your client, and they haven't received the benefit of spirit. That's rude. That's just rude. So always have it in your mind if this isn't working. And I've actually said to the client, you know, after 10 minutes, you know, I just don't feel like I'm giving you what you really want. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, everything's just right, spot on. Everything you said is just right, and I know exactly what you're saying. But they had this deadpan expression on their face, and I didn't recognize that they were understanding what I was saying. So I'm kind of giving you a few things to think about. I do want you to seriously consider putting together a list of ethical statements, because not only does it help you come to terms with what you're doing with this work, where you want to go with it, who you want to assist, it also gives other people a chance to know where you're coming from. You may want to, if you have a website that you use for your work, you may want to put it on your website or on a brochure. You may even just have it on a piece of paper, and if somebody emails you and says, what do you think? And you can send them a copy, you know, what's going on with you with your ethical statements. Know that your ethical statements are brought about through the integrity of who you are. So let that part shine through as well. I'm going to be adding a few excerpts from this same chapter, so you'll have the visual learning as well. And I look forward to the usual last Thursday of the month interactive discussion on Facebook. You take care.